When I was 26, I moved into a small, rundown house in a quiet Cleveland suburb. It was a one-bedroom with peeling paint and a sagging porch, but the rent was so cheap I couldn't say no. I was working double shifts as a barista, barely making ends meet after art school. The house had a basement, but the landlord, a gruff old guy named Carl, told me it was off limits. "Private tenant uses it for storage," he said, waving me off. The basement door in the hallway by the kitchen was sealed with a heavy padlock that looked older than the house itself. I didn't care much. I had no use for a damp, creepy basement anyway. The first month was fine. The house was drafty, the pipes groaned, and the neighbors kept to themselves. I'd come home from late shifts, usually around 1 a.m., make a sandwich, and crash on my thrift store couch. But about 6 weeks in, I started hearing something strange. It was faint at first, a soft, rhythmic tapping from the basement, like someone knocking on a metal pipe. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. I chalked it up to old plumbing or rats and turned up my music to drown it out. But it kept happening, always when I got home late and turned on the kitchen light. One night I got back around 2 a.m., bone tired from a 12-hour shift. I flicked on the light and the tapping started immediately, louder than before. I froze, sandwich halfway to my mouth. It wasn't random. It felt deliberate, like someone was signaling me. I crept to the basement door and pressed my ear against it. The tapping stopped. Then a slow, deliberate scratch dragged down the other side of the wood like fingernails on a chalkboard. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and grabbed a knife from the kitchen. I didn't sleep that night, sitting on the couch with every light on, staring at the door. The next day I called Carl. He sounded annoyed. Said the basement was empty except for old junk, and that I was imagining things. I pressed him, asking if anyone else had a key. He snapped, "Nobody's been in there for years," and hung up. That night the tapping was back, but now it was accompanied by a faint hum, like someone muttering under their breath. I started keeping the lights off when I got home, working by the glow of my phone. When I did that, the noises stopped. It was like whatever was down there was waiting for my signal, for the light to prove I was home. A week later, things escalated. I came home at 4 a.m. after a closing shift and found the basement door ajar, the padlock dangling open. My stomach dropped. I called out, "Who's there?" My voice echoed in the silent house. No answer. I grabbed a flashlight and shined it down the stairwell. The beam caught cobwebs and stacks of moldy boxes, but nothing moved. I slammed the door shut, wedged a chair under the knob, and texted Carl. He didn't respond until morning, saying he'd look into it. The next night, I found a note slipped under my front door. It was a torn piece of graph paper with smudged ink that read, "Turn the light off." My hands shook so bad I dropped it. I ran to the kitchen window, which faced a narrow alley. Across the way, another house's window stared back, dark and empty. Or so I thought, until I saw a shadow shift behind the glass, just for a second. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, just sat there clutching my phone, debating whether to call the cops. What would I say? I hear tapping and got a weird note. It felt like a bad dream. I couldn't take it anymore. I went to Carl's office, a dingy trailer near the property, and demanded he open the basement. He looked pale, muttering about how it wasn't necessary, but I wouldn't leave. Finally, he grabbed a ring of keys and led me to the basement door. The air was thick with damp and mildew as we descended. The basement was a maze of crates, old furniture, and rusted tools. But in the far corner, behind a tarp, we found a sleeping bag, still warm, a half-eaten sandwich on a paper plate, and a notebook. I flipped it open, pages of dates, times, and details about me. 1:47 a.m., kitchen light on, wearing red hoodie. 2:15 a.m., eating cereal, left blinds open. My knees buckled. Carl swore he had no idea, but his eyes darted nervously. The police came, dusted for prints, and took the notebook. They found no matches in their database. Carl claimed the lock must have been tampered with, but I saw the fear in his face. I moved out 2 days later, leaving most of my stuff behind. I'm in a new apartment now, in a different city. But I still hear tapping some nights. I never turn on the lights after midnight. When I was 15, my family left Denver for a cabin in the Colorado Rockies, deep in a valley surrounded by endless pine forests. It was my mom's dream: escape the city, live off the grid. The cabin was old, built in the 1950s, with creaky floors and a wood stove that barely kept us warm. A narrow dirt trail behind the house led into the woods, marked by faded signs for hikers. My mom called it peaceful. I called it isolating. The nearest neighbor was an hour away, and at night, the silence was so thick it felt like a weight on your chest. Our dog, Rusty, a scrappy mutt who never shut up, loved the woods. I'd take him out on the trail every evening, letting him chase squirrels while I listened to music. One dusk, about a month after we moved in, Rusty stopped dead on the path, growling low at something in the trees. I yanked out my earbuds and shined my flashlight. Nothing but shadows and pine needles. Then I saw it, a small stack of rocks, 3 high, perfectly balanced, with a stick wedged into the top like an arrow pointing toward our cabin. It wasn't a normal trail marker. It felt too deliberate, too neat. I kicked it over, figuring some hiker was messing around, and dragged Rusty home. That night, Rusty went berserk, barking at the back door like something was trying to get in. I peeked out and saw the motion sensor light by the shed glowing. In the dirt, just beyond the porch, was another rock stack, identical to the one I'd destroyed. My heart raced. I woke my parents, but my dad, half asleep, said it was probably kids or a lost camper. The next morning, the stack was gone, like it had never been there. But Rusty wouldn't go near the trail anymore, whimpering when I tried to leash him. Over the next few weeks, the stacks kept appearing, always at night, always closer to the house. I'd find them by the shed, the porch, even the back door. Rusty's barking became a nightly ritual, and I started noticing other things. Scratches on the shed door, shallow but fresh, like someone had dragged a knife across it. My mom thought it was a bear, but bears don't stack rocks. One night around 3 a.m., I woke to a low whistle outside my window, like someone mimicking a bird call, but off, too sharp. I crept to the blinds and peeked out. The motion light was on, and there, just beyond the shed, stood a figure in a tattered jacket holding another rock stack. His head tilted like he was staring right at me. I screamed for my dad, who grabbed his shotgun and ran outside, but the figure was gone. The stack was there, though, with a scrap of paper tucked inside. In jagged handwriting, it read, "Stay on the trail." We called the sheriff the next day. He and a deputy followed fresh footprints into the forest, where they found an old campsite a mile away. Empty cans, a torn sleeping bag, and a ring of rock stacks around a fire pit. The deputy said it was probably a drifter, but his face was grim. They took the note and told us to lock our doors. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept my flashlight on, sweeping it across my room. Around 4 a.m., I heard the whistle again, closer this time, right outside the cabin. I didn't dare look. The next morning, we found Rusty's collar on the porch, sliced clean in half, next to another rock stack. Rusty was gone. We moved back to Denver a week later. The sheriff never found anyone, but they did find a knife buried in the dirt near the campsite, its blade etched with strange symbols. I still dream about that trail, And sometimes when I walk my new dog, I swear I see a stack of rocks just out of the corner of my eye.